Welcome to the second in the dialogue series that we have initiated on the birthday of Sir last month, and which also happened to be the International Day of Yoga. So this is the Yoga of Desikachar dialogue series, and we are heartened to see all of you join us for the second month for the second dialogue series. I would invite Jyotsna, who is a student of Desikachar for several decades and also a dancer and dance teacher with a long association with Kalakshetra in Chennai, to anchor today's session and to also invite our wonderful guests so that we can get started with the session. And before Jyotsna steps in, just one logistical announcement. If you are wondering why you are not able to chat, the chats are disabled during the dialogue session. And once the initial dialogue session is complete, we have an interactive Q&A session, at which point you can either message on the chat or we will also invite you to unmute and speak. Until then, I hope you enjoy the dialogue. Jyotsna, over to you.
Thank you very much, Harry. And a very warm welcome to every one of us here. We will begin the morning session today, morning to us here in India, and to the rest of you in other parts of the world. Welcome. We will begin our session with some chanting. Dr. Laurence.
Et nubes plunt justum, aperiatur terra, et gendit salvatorem. Eliant gloriam Dei, et opera manum eius annunciat firmamentum. Rorate celi de super, et nubes pluant justum, aperiatur terra, et germinet salvatorem.
Thank you very much. Welcome again to every one of you here who is gathered to celebrate the memory of our teacher, Desikachar. Or should I say more appropriately, the spirit of our teacher, Desikachar, the spirit of yoga that he represented through his life and of course through his teachings. Desikachar often said that there were two strong influences that shaped him. Of course, one was his father, Krishnamacharya, from whom he received the deeply traditional learning of ancient knowledge and practices. The other, of course, was J. Krishnamurti. What perhaps makes Desikachar's teaching unique was his almost seamless combining of engaging with ancient wisdom and this whole beautiful coming together with a very fiery intellect, almost fierce, uncompromising openness of thought. This was perhaps very attractive to most or all of his students across the world. But it is towards this understanding and this rather unique dimension of yoga that the Ritambara Ashram and Yoga Vahini have come together to organize this series that we are calling the Yoga of Desikachar, a series that attempts to engage through dialogue and discussion with those who have experienced the Yoga of Desikachar, so to speak, a series that is planned towards culminating in a conference in 2022. Through these conversations, we hope to see what it means to all of us today to be a part of this tradition, of this legacy. How do each of us hold it? How do we share from it as teachers, but also as human beings? But specifically, these discussions are intended to make us reflect upon a few key aspects. One, who are we today as teachers of yoga in this tradition? What does it mean to be a teacher in this tradition? Two, what is at the root of my current yoga teaching, each one of us? What is my foundation, my source? And three, how has Desikachar impacted and influenced us, making us who we are today? So these are certain key questions that we hope to discover in ourselves and through the others that will be speaking to us in this series of dialogue and conversations. But of course, for us to have a better understanding of what Ritambara Ashram stands for, what Yoga Vahini represents, and why they have conceived of this series, I would like to invite Raghu Ananthanarayanan and Saraswati to speak to us and tell us more about this whole process. Raghu Ananthanarayan, of course, is the chief mentor of the Ritambara Ashram, one of the earliest students of Desikachar, a good friend of Desikachar, I would say as well, also studied with Krishnamacharya, and somebody who is himself deeply influenced by Krishnamurti. Raghu, could I please invite you to come and speak to us? Also, if you would please introduce the book that you have currently worked on, that would be very beautiful for us to listen to as well. Thank you, Raghu.
Yeah, thanks, Jyotsna. Yeah, from yesterday evening, I've been trying to wrap my head around what has happened. Right. So yesterday evening, Krishnamacharya Yoga Mandiram did the release of the book, and so on. So, and one of the people who was there as a chief guest or whatever was Indira Parekh, and it was very interesting, and because she was there when the initial discussion started between Deshkachar, Professor Garg, and myself. So it's kind of way back, goes right back to the beginning. And I really been trying to wrap my head around this. How did this happen? Yeah, because releasing the book yesterday was, I've been thinking about it. It's like repaying a Guru Rina. Yeah, and one of the things that I remembered was what happened when I first went to meet Deshkachar. Yeah, and what state of mind I was in, and so on. And he has commented about it in some place, I don't remember where, and he's talked about it later, saying that he thought I was really wild. Okay. And, when I look back, I often think, now, if I had gone to meet me, right, at that point of time as a teacher, would I have said yes to that Raghu? Right? And I don't know, I'm not too sure. Because when I went to meet him, it was at a particularly difficult period of my life. And I'm absolutely certain that if he had not invited me to be his student and so on, I may not be where I am today. Because it was such a critical turning point. And I often think that, you know, if I had not met him, I'd probably have gone down the drain in some way. Because I was really at a very deep personal crisis at that time. And I think the two meetings that were particularly important was, which happened kind of close to each other, was meeting Krishnaji and meeting Desikachar, right? And the strange thing is when he finally, you know, sat me down and said, "Why do you want to learn yoga from me?" I just kind of said, "I want to bring together yoga and psychology in some way," right? I still wonder why I said it. Yeah. And a lot of things happened after that, which have actually taken me down that path. Right. And, you know, when I look back, I can't wrap my head around it and say why or whatever. And this is probably what people refer to as Guru Kataksham or, you know, something like that. You know, why was I led down this path and so on? I just have no clue. And I attribute a lot of it to Deshkachar's willingness to take me into his mentorship, uh, uh, dialogue with me about so many things, right? And you know, if I look back, you know, there are a number of times when I've done things which, you know, maybe I wouldn't have accepted of myself. But Deshikachar was willing to look at it and, you know, dialogue it and so on. So uh, that's the deepest, most critical learning for me. Um, and you know, if this book has come out today, it's got to do uh, with all the dialogues I've had with Deshikachar, the kind of openness with which he welcomed, you know, people like a Pulin Garg, who was already a pioneer in his area of work, and how the dialogues happened and so on. And also the ability to constantly, you know, enable our growth, because when you grow, you start changing, right? And then for the relationship to keep changing and be continue to be meaningful, I think is something extremely important. So one hopes that, you know, through whatever I'm doing and so on, that some of this spirit and some of this space can be taken forward. And I really think taking forward the heritage that Krishnamacharya and Deshkachar have offered us is extremely important, because I really believe that, you know, the more people understand yoga deeply, the more they're going to be able to take decisions that will be dharmic and which might help us avert the kind of crisis that the world is moving towards. So that's where I am today, and hopefully steps will unfold that are meaningful, right? So that's the spirit with which I guess I've said yes to creating Ratambara. I didn't create Ratambara, no. There is a number of people who I think were like me when I went to Deshkachar, who came up and said, "How do we deal with yoga? How do we use yoga to discover our lives?" And maybe that's why uh, the whole process has begun again. Yeah. That's all. That's all I can think of right now.
Thank you, Raghu. I want to start by congratulating you and, of course, Dr. Lata and the KYM team who have helped with this book. I think it's just what we need today. And it's going to be a very valuable resource for yoga teachers and therapists. As a practitioner, I have found your teachings and how you communicate your teachings very contemplative and gives a very clear direction for practice and action that I think we can stay for a lifetime. So thank you. I can't just wait to get hold on the book. So coming to Yoga Vahini, I would like to describe Yoga Vahini as a growing community of seekers, practitioners, teachers, therapists from across the world. It's a very diverse community with a unified vision of taking the teachings of yoga as learned from our teachers in this tradition. So I was with KYM for 17 years studying with Desikachar and other senior teachers. And then I started Yoga Vahini 13 years ago. And when I started, I felt that what I had learned was not enough, definitely, but I had already started sharing. So I felt a little bit alone and incomplete. But Sir, being the person he was, I think his spirit continues to guide all of us, and his generosity is something beyond everything else that truly would define this person. And so he kept sending teachers to us. Said, "You are not alone. You have so many senior teachers who are going to come and help you and support you." So then now our community is really receiving priceless teachings and guidance from many of our senior teachers, particularly Raghu, Lakshmi, Sriram, Jyotsna, Dr. Lata, Vijivasu. We're also learning from Srivatsa Ramaswamy sir, who studied with Krishnamacharya. So our understanding is getting refined and polished continuously. We feel more inspired and want to offer more and be better. So we continue to, when we continue to receive so much, we really want to learn and be able to offer more and more. So the initiative of Yoga of Desikachar along with Ritambara is to really bring together many of the senior teachers whom we are experiencing the power of their teachings together on a platform so that we are able to share the teachings and the experience of these teachers across the world, the way they have received the teachings from Desikachar and how are they taking it forward in their life and work. So I think this is a very important and extremely valuable initiative for teachers in this tradition, for us to stay connected with our roots and be nourished by it. And like Jyotsna said, the spirit of Desikachar continues to guide and support us in this journey. A little bit about Yoga Vahini and what we do. Our training programs, we do teacher training and therapist training programs, which are very rigorous. And we have evolved a system of getting aspiring teachers and therapists to first ground oneself in their own personal practice, sadhana, and self-inquiry before getting into training to offer others. So it's a long route, but it's a beautiful journey if you choose to unlearn everything and just start afresh as a practitioner and a learner, as a student of yoga. We therefore offer a yoga sadhana program, which is really like the foundation or the, which helps you to lay the building blocks of what is yoga, why are we practicing, how to connect practice to the teachings of the Yoga Sutra, etc. Personal classes and one-on-one therapy is the main part of our work. We're also into research now with the guidance of Dr. Lata. And we have recently initiated a new program called Arogyam, just inaugurated on Guru Purnima Day, 2 days ago. So Arogyam is an initiative to bring yoga from this tradition through group classes, small group classes. We don't take more than 10 people per batch. We have started with 4 courses for beginners, stress relief, women's well-being, and pranayama. So it's the entire community of teachers and generation of teachers and therapists who are coming together to make these offerings online. And so it's a massive initiative, and we really seek the blessings and guidance and support of all of you as we venture into this new journey through Arogya. That's what I wanted to share, and over to you, Joseph.
Thank you very much, Saras. That, of course, was Saraswati Vasudevan, the founder of Yoga Vahini. She certainly doesn't need an introduction. Thank you very much, Saras, for bringing all this to us. And now, of course, we move to our guest speakers for today. We have two of the earliest students of Desikachar, Lakshmi Ranganathan, who is to us in this tradition, in this parampara, an elder, so to speak, along with people like Raghuanath Narayanan, Prabhakar, Lalita Ganguly, and many of them, Srivatsa Ramaswamy sir, also of that time. These are elders in this tradition, Mukundan and Girija, and many others who have been also in that space all along for all of us who were younger that came along to be able to touch that spirit that we call Desikachar or his yoga. So we have Lakshmi Ranganathan with us this morning, and we have also Dr. Laurence Maman, who you heard chanting in the beginning, but of course a more detailed introduction is very much on the cards. So we have Lakshmi, who will speak to us first this morning. Lakshmi is a very senior teacher, as I said, continues to teach. Her special area of work, of course, is in yoga for women during pregnancy. And all of us go to her to seek her guidance and advice, especially in the areas of pranayama, which has been her current space of work. And she's always very ready to share of her expertise, very ready to sit and talk to us, tell us what we can do as we work with students. This is Lakshmi. Lakshmi has worked for over 4 decades, starting with Desikachar, I think in the 70s or perhaps in 1970 itself, where when she started studying. What I would like to mention here is that, well, many of us trust and trusted Desikachar with our emotions, with our minds, and also with problems that came upon in our bodies. We would trust him implicitly. Lakshmi is one of the few, I think, that Desikachar trusted. And this is something that I have felt I need to say today, because this is truly beautiful. When you see a teacher actually holding deep trust in his eyes when a student enters, it is something extremely special. And every time I have seen Lakshmi in the presence of Desikachar, I have seen his eyes hold deep trust, deep respect for who she is. Lakshmi Ranganathan is with us this morning, and I am certainly waiting to listen to her and to see what she will be able to tell us about this learning process and her life with this whole process of studying yoga and working with Desikachar and Krishnamacharya. Thank you very much, Lakshmi, for coming and being with us, but thank you also for being an elder. Thank you.
I've been listening to all of you, even the first program also. It's as though they are echoing my sentiments or my feelings, which I have towards. But maybe I can also perhaps express more or less the same thing, but in my own words. First, let me thank all of you who made this program, Saraswati, Ratambara, and everybody who made this program possible. Unlike my entry into the yoga world was different. Unlike many who were searching for something So, wanted to go away from the mainstream. I had no lofty ideas and all that, but I had a very clear seeking of healing. I had a very massive head neck injury, and the pain was quite intense. And my friend who was doing yoga with Desikachar from 68, that's Ranganathan, who's now my husband, he said, I will take you to a teacher. So I was clueless about all this. So when I was a little, I would say apprehensive, because this was in 1970. Those days, these unmarried girls from a traditional background don't go to meet a yoga guru, you see. So I was wondering, somebody in this attired in white robes or some silken splendor, spouting some philosophy. But Mohan assured me, no, you come. And the minute I saw him, he was also, because I also met Krishnamacharya at that point, he also looked at me. I saw somebody with very simple attire, just a shirt and veshti, very friendly and with a warm smile, and really a warm smile extending welcome. Now, I don't want to go through all this, but let me say, my healing process started. Maybe it's another way of seeking. My healing process, because I was also confused and was in pain and fear. And I got healed, to put it all in one sentence. Now I continued. I do not know why, but I continued. My curiosity, I was working elsewhere, but my curiosity started. I left my work. And then at this point, I would like to mention something about the classes of Desikachar, because there is something very unique. I think TV or Sri Ram had mentioned, that clarity of his observation. And this is also important for the modern context, the way we are handling classes. First thing is, there is silence. And he spoke with minimum words, instructions with minimum words. This is what I want you to do. And there was the blackboard at the back. He would write the figure also. It is interesting to note that perhaps he was the pioneer of this visual presentation, which is very prevalent everywhere now. Without visual presentation, nothing goes on now. But nobody realized it at that time. Very clear. If an elbow has to be bent, it will be bent in the figure. There is no need to explain. What is important is, with this clear instruction, minimum word, he never repeated. If you missed it, that's all. You have to find your own way. So the classes were very quiet. The silence was there and you were doing something, but he was watching you with sharp, very sharp. Then as we progressed towards pranayama, in fact, Lalita Ganguly and I were discussing that time. This was the best part of it, because he would, whatever ratio or technique and all those things, he would explain very briefly again. And then as we started, he would leave the room. He won't be there. It can be 5 minutes or 10 minutes or 15 minutes. Till he came, we were alone with our breath. There is nothing else to look or even see. So you just go on inside, trying to find something inside. This later I realized was a very unique way of teaching, you see. The silence which is there, which you can connect right from the beginning, learning to watch your breath. A very difficult process, but this was the start. Now, why I emphasize on silence is, in our teaching nowadays, there are too many words spoken, including me. We have a habit of over-explaining, almost like a instruction manual, you see. We go on talking, and as the teacher say, relax, do this, do that. And when it comes to pranayama, again, we start saying things like, I've seen this many times in the net also. relax, watch your breath, go to the silence inside, which is very difficult for a student, you know, when some chattering is going on around you, to be silent and watching anything. I think this is a very important aspect I learned from him right from the beginning. And this journey continued, and I was, you know, how he is. He can teach so many things at your own level, be it asana practice, pranayama, theory, yoga sutra, or many other subjects, you see. Again, I had no idea. I was just learning and proceeding. Then one fine day, I think it was in 75 or something, he said, you should start teaching. I was really scared and upset because I have attended both his class and Perivar, also Perivar to come in and give some inputs also. So I'm going to tell this anecdote, Saraswati, because it is very pertaining the subject I'm talking about. So I had a student who was perhaps I said elderly lady. Actually, she was in her late 40s. At that point, she was elderly to me because I was in my 20s, you see. So in the roles are reversed now. So who was also a student of Desikachar at one point. This is the beginning of therapy. She said she had back pain. I have given you instruction, you teach. And as I entered and I started teaching something very simple. She got very annoyed and she said, look, see how I can do. And she demonstrated Paschimottanasana, Janushirasasana, textbook perfect, you know. Then I got very scared. Then Sir was teaching in the next room with some other student. I went and knocked the door. Then he said, what happened? I said, no, she said, she won't learn because these are all very simple. Then she said, no, I told you, I tell her that I told you to do that. And which I went back and related, which she wouldn't agree. I'm afraid I disturbed Swak quite a few times. And then I went there, he said, he drew 1 or 2 lines in that paper and he put B. And when I took it back, that lady accepted that. And she was very happy. Later, she became a friend of mine. That few lines of his made a lot of difference to somebody, see. Now, I was nervous and very flustered. And after the class was over, I told Sir, I don't think I can teach because I got very scared. And I realized I don't know anything. I don't know nothing. He said, that is the best way to start. You have really started well. To know nothing, to realize that is the best beginning. And, you know, later it started and I went on. Many of you has met this encouragement and confidence and not interfering is in the teaching of somebody else is a very unique quality of self. And then later, I think the KYM started 77 or 70 something. And all my friends who are here were there. I must at this point tell that we were a different lot, each one with their different in the sense, maybe a little difficult also for the common people normally. Each one had their own interests, searching for something, getting lost, looking into something, and learning to balance your life with work, all this kind of thing. But he was able to direct everybody. I always, again, I discuss with my friend Lalita, it's like a sculptor doing his work. What you call in Tamil, sedukkarat, you know, removing all this unnecessary debris, useless parts, and fine-tuning you to go on your own. This individuality, he never interfered, you see. But still, together we were a very happy lot, comfortable with each other and learning from each other, sharing what we had, discussing. So it was a very nice atmosphere there. He was very friendly. He was very warm, everything, but he was strict with the work. you have to do what, the learning was very strict. There is no doubt about it. We had to constantly, as I think Saraswati said, unlearn and learn kind of thing. So this is how we managed, went along. And another thing I noticed in all this, I was very lucky later to be part of he would be doing consultation to the new students who came in. So thrice or 3 times a week, I was there with him in the evening for a few years. And that is where I learned a lot. The way he observed and watched, the unique sense of clarity was there. And also the knowledge, which sometimes he would talk to me after that. I would ask a question, he would reply or sometimes not reply, which means you'll have to find the answer yourself kind of thing. But in his knowledge, I realized, because he would listen, that's one thing he did, was to listen to the person who's talking. He would be listening, and then he would take a piece of paper and note something and not ask. He was very kind to them also. Then he would write the teacher's name there. I don't know on what basis he matched the teacher and the student. He would do that. And I would sometimes take the paper and see, why is this one doing this? Why is this one doing? And he would ask me a question, things like that. So like this, I learned that his knowledge was just not dry. There is some kind of intuitiveness and also awareness. There is some awareness in this knowledge, see. And also his observations were very clear. And whatever he wrote in the paper for the student, whoever, whether it is Sri Ram or Menaka or whoever was handling, there used to be clear instruction, draw and mark the part which is affected and things like that. So these are the things I learned from him. And till today, I'm trying to find out more about it. You can talk a lot about there is no end to this, but finally, this path of mine continued. At last, I left everything like floating to see what am I interested, where am I going? I see do I have to go upstream searching something? All these thoughts came, but I never found anything it was almost like everything. Then I realized that more and more, my interest was in therapy and pranayama, which is really healing and breath. Healing and breath was my main idea, which I liked to follow, to put it in a very simple way. And this in fact, I started, after I left, my work continues in this area. Something PV said last time when he was talking, that Periyar said that the first cry of a baby is yoga. I said, I agree with, it's a very truthful statement, because when the first flow of prana, as we are born, the prana flows from the Atma. So that is that which we have to try to see what's happening there. So this is now, there are a lot of you taking over this work. Many of you are continuing. Saraswati with her TV. But we all have this foundation, which we might go in different direction, but the foundation has a base which is very strong. To me, each one has expressed it in their own way. To me, I would say what I learned basically, which I like to do, of course, his simplicity is one thing, but the effort of learning, that is knowledge, is dry without some intuitive awareness. Same way, abhyasa is not complete without clarity and compassion. This is the thing I like to work on, and I try to find what I'm looking for. And I think I like to pass this message to all those who are in the field of yoga. I think that's it. So with this, I complete my speech. I have said what I wanted to, and I am happy to be part of this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lakshmi, for coming across with such beauty and grace. Thank you. Just to take from what Lakshmi was just telling us about how each one that went to Desikachar was so different, just not just different, but fiercely different. And
Unsit.
yeah,
It's like Navagraha, you know, each one in a different direction, yet without the combination, life won't move. You see, that kind of thing was the spirit of Kevalya. Yeah.
absolutely. I think that says a lot also for the teacher that could hold that Navagraha together. But there's something that I just was reminded of, that Desikachar would always talk about the Kshetrajna and the Kshetrika. He would say to me, Jyotsna, don't become a Kshetrajna. They are important. Kshetrajnas are the agricultural scientists. They know about everything. They know the theory and the philosophy of everything. But become a Kshetrika. You must be the farmer that takes this knowledge to the field. You must know one strain of rice from another strain, how this one strain can arrive at its potential, how the other strain can arrive at its own potential, and then prepare these different soils, the different fields, care for them, tend to them, enable them to grow. And of course, finally, he would say, but Kshetrika, he doesn't keep all the rice for himself. It goes into the world. So I was just reminded of that when Lakshmi was speaking. And I think Desikachar was honestly a Kshetrika who worked every day, asana class, like Lakshmi was sharing with us, pranayama, asana, working with each individual's emotion. So thank you, Lakshmi, for bringing that back, that beautiful essence. Thank you. And now, of course, we have Dr. Laurence Maman. It's such a pleasure to have her again with us in this space. My earliest memory of Dr. Laurence was of her coming into a session with Desikachar sir. And sir would say, "This is my old friend, Dr. Laurence." Anyone who's been with Desikachar knows that exuberance. This is my old friend. And he would say, he would hold her very tightly and say, she chants excellently. You must all listen to her. And of course, just as she is beginning to do now, the one thing I remember of Dr. Laurence is her face would light up with this absolutely beautiful smile. I think I'm quite certain it's a smile that comes from the heart. Right. And Desikachar would then embark on this beautiful, very loving, affectionate introduction of his old friend. Right. So thank you, Dr. Laurence, for accepting to be with us again. It feels like the family is complete again. Thank you. Today, of course, Dr. Laurence is a very senior yoga teacher and a teacher of teachers in France. Of course, like she says, Desikachar wanted her to be a doctor. And that's what she did for many decades. Went back to France, studied medicine, became a physician, practiced medicine, and then, of course, today has moved back into the space of yoga. She believes that this is where her heart is just now. And we are most happy to listen to you today and to have you share about this old friend of yours. Thank you very much, Dr. Laurence. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you very much, Jyotsna. And I feel so, I hope you will be able to understand me, my English. I feel so happy, honored to be amongst you today. Really, it means a lot to me. It is true that after all these years, this meeting with Sir Desikachar has been, I think, the most important thing in my life, I would say. Maybe there have been some more, of course, but really, and what I received from him and from the people I met around him is still so much alive, really. I think I would like to start with the third question which was put, because I think the point about how he has impacted and influenced us in our journeys is very important. Maybe I'm going to speak a little bit about how I met yoga. Actually, I started yoga not long before my father's death, and it was I was 16. My mother had the idea of learning yoga, and we went together to different classes in my area in around Paris, I would say. And then we, after a first teachers training program which we attended, we met, I met, I would say, François Lorrain and Claude Maréchal, and I would like to pay a tribute to them, because they were really my first teachers in Desikachar's I would say tradition. Or when I met them, actually it was also in a place where Sir was present, because it was in Zinal in Switzerland, and the European Yoga Union was organizing these meetings, and Desikachar was there, and also François and Claude. So I really met him, and then started to study again, to get trained again as a yoga teacher with Claude in Belgium, because Desikachar had asked me to not to give up my medical studies before I started going to India. He had accepted me in India, but I had to finish my studies before. So during this interval of time, I had a new teacher's training with Claude Maréchal in Belgium. And Claude, I want to say, I think is a very good teacher, and with a very systematical way of teaching, which he received from he made something personal, of course, through what he received from Desikachar. So when I went to meet Desikachar first, it was in Chennai. It was in 77. He didn't really teach me asana, pranayama, and so on. Sometimes it happened, but mostly the private classes were around Yoga Sutra, around speaking about my own life. I think I needed somebody to listen, who was listening to me. And I will come back to what you said, many of you, his ability to listen, his kindness, his simplicity, yes, he was really there for the person. It was wonderful, I would say. And so, of course, I think I learned from him many things about yoga, yoga philosophy and so on. But what I learned mostly was his quality of relationship, his presence, the way he I was very shy then. I am still quite shy, but I was very shy, and he pushed me to work with people. For instance, I think the first time I went there, because I went to Chennai for every year for a number of years. Then I stopped because I became a mother. It was more difficult and so on. And then I came back again. And even from the first time, he gave me somebody to teach in the KYM, which was something which helped me to go over this fear I could have. I remember something which was very strange in a way. He sent me to Kerala to teach, to speak about Vedic chanting, and it was in front of a group of elder people, and a French young lady doing this. I suppose it was a little bit provocative also from him. And of course, I did all these things. And it really gave me courage. Yes. This, I think he saw in people what the people could do, and in which directions he could bring them. And what happened with me about chanting was something like that. He had noticed that I was quite shy when I was speaking, and then I started chanting. I think it was the sutra, and he saw that the voice was different and so on. So he really encouraged me to do a lot with chanting. So I cannot, I have to stop speaking about him maybe, because I could go on and on for a very long time. Yes, there is something I would like to say before I leave this point. It is that I think he had of course a very clear frame, I would say, concerning the teaching of yoga, how to reflect about yoga, how to prepare asana, pranayama, and so on in the practice, how to do it. The frame was very clear, and at the same time he was improvising all the time. And he really encouraged me too, regarding chanting, especially regarding chanting, to improvise. So what I brought back in France, of course, was chanting the Yoga Sutra, Vedic chanting, but also I started to introduce with my yoga students simple sounds, and of course, but also French texts from different traditions and so on. And I think it was an attempt, it is still an attempt to get adapted to what people can really feel, which is more from their culture also. Because I think I think it must have been difficult for him to address Westerners. He often said that. He even said, I remember one day he told us that we as Westerners couldn't really understand what a guru shishya relationship is. And I think it was a little painful for him, but he was really telling this. And so I think he was, especially with his Western students, I suppose, he was really encouraging us to find also our own ways, keeping this very strong frame at the same time. Now about so the roots of his teaching, I think, are inside me. As I told you in the beginning, it is everything I have been doing in my country since I met Desikachar, yoga and Desikachar. I think everything has been attached to this line of yoga, I would say. For instance, of course, I'm a medical doctor. He pushed me to get into yoga therapy, but I had to find little by little what I was more interested in, and it relates to the psyche, to the mind, and so on. So in France, I began to study, I would say, psychology, psychotherapy, and now it is around psychoanalysis. Actually, I think it's really a way of Svadhyaya, which is relevant maybe to the West, and but everything that I'm doing is always attached I think is integrated into my yoga practice, yoga teaching, and so on. So the roots are there, and what comes then is always related very strongly to these roots. Maybe I will say a few words also about the modern world, because I think it is changing so quickly. I won't speak about everything which happens in the world, but even in the world of yoga, I don't know exactly how it is in India, but in France, for instance, when I receive now new people who want to get trained as yoga teachers, I can see that many of them have been experimenting all kinds of yoga taught by people who don't have a clear relationship to India, I would say. They have been very often, they take something here, something there, and so on. And so sometimes I don't know exactly why these people want to study with me in order to get teachers. Maybe they don't know exactly when they arrive also. And sometimes now I think, for how long is it going to be possible to get them connected to our tradition? I really wonder. And then I start teaching, and it takes, of course, several months before something happens. But I can see that little by little they feel how coherent, I don't know if the word is correct, they see the logic, the completeness in a way of this teaching, of our teaching. And little by little, I think they get more and more sensitive to Desikachar's spirit, I would say that. They want, little by little, they want to know a little more about him, for instance, also. And so I think there is still hope. But at the same time, I think it's becoming in a way more and more difficult in this world where one person goes from one way of doing to another and so on. And I don't know, in many cases, I don't know what will happen with the students after they finish the teachers training program, which it lasts for 4 years. The programs generally in France in the Institut Français de Yoga, for which I teach, lasts for 4 years. And I know that some really go on and get connected, and probably some will go elsewhere. But anyway, Ishvara Pranidhana. Yes. So I think the most important thing would be to teach people to be able to reflect, to think. I think in thought there can be freedom. And I will end with a memory from Desikachar again. It was in just at the beginning of 2000, actually. I was supposed to translate him in a meeting which had to take place in France. And then my second daughter became very, very ill, sick, and she had to go to the hospital in Paris. And I couldn't leave her. And Sir came along with Claude to see her in the hospital. And we had lunch together afterwards. And I told him, of course, he knew that I couldn't go and translate him as it was expected. No problem, of course. And I told him, I can't even move from this hospital room. And he told me, you can't move, but you can always think. And for me, it was yes, freedom, really. Freedom in thought. Thank you very much.
Beautiful. What a gem in the end of it all. Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you, Laurence, for this sharing of your time and your life and what you have received. Thank you very much. I think we will have questions and a discussion if anybody feels up to it now. I'll also leave it to Hari because he will explain the technicalities of this session of question and answer. But thank you again very, very much, Lakshmi and Laurence, for being with us this morning. Thank you so much. Hari, I will hand it over to you.
Thank you, Jyotsna. Thank you, Lakshmi and Laurence, for the very evocative and touching sharing about your experience learning and growing as teachers with Sir. For students of yoga like me, it's a great honor to listen to all of you. So we'll now open up the session for questions and interaction. The chat, you can either ping on the chat if you have any questions, or if anybody would like to unmute, you can mention it on the chat and we could unmute and speak also. That's also possible. So, and we do have few senior teachers here. We have Saraswati, we have Raghu, Sriram. So if you have any questions or anything you would like to share with Lakshmi and Laurence, I think that's also possible as we wait for the questions. Okay, Baxter says he would like to speak. Baxter, you can unmute.
Hi, lovely to see everybody. I have a question for any teacher who would like to answer, who was lucky enough to have been trained by Sir. And that is because he was the master of the stick figure drawings, right? So if that wasn't your strength, what did he offer to you to improve your stick figure drawings?
Whether he improved.
Did he make you repeat them 100 times over?
See, regarding these stick figures, I have looked into my book, just what Desikachar has done. In 1970 and in 2008, there's a lot of difference in the stick figure. So I think everybody, in fact, 2008 was more on some kind of correct mechanical way of the body. Remember, he was also just starting in 1970. He was in his 30s or something. And it was like flowing figures, you see, the hands and things like that. But your question was how to improve. I don't know. The others should say how I drew stick figures. I like to draw. He did not train, but he put it, whatever he drew, it's also from the mind. So we drew, and once you start drawing, your hand and mind is connected, it starts working. Is that enough? And it improves, of course. Anything improves with practice.
I would say that when I was studying with him, it was not an issue. I could see his drawings. I made drawings. Claude Maréchal, again, was very precise also in his drawings. So I learned like this, but nobody ever corrected me. But I feel that what is very interesting when your students do this is that you can see their representation of the body. You can see that one foot, for the feet, for instance, are drawn the opposite side they should be on. For instance, there are many things which actually I think you can learn from the precision of these very simple drawings. You can learn about the way somebody sees the body. I think there is something linked to the awareness of the body, which is very interesting, I think.
One more thing I like to say, because on the I was not correcting, but there were trays where these programs were, everybody had to make a course and we keep copy. Then Sir said, have a look at it. I was sorry, everybody's stick figure were also different.
Yes.
Their mind was in that. They are some with long legs, some with, that was interesting. You could look at that and say, who's it?
Thank you. We have Shruti would like to ask a question. Shruti, you can unmute and ask.
Question is, number one, they say in our tradition we focus a lot more on individual practice, but when we look at other schools, there's a lot of general practice, like because yoga is so vast, a small portion is given and then it is given as a common food to many individuals, and it works depending on the shraddha of an individual. So I just wanted to kind of understand this emphasis on this one particular person. How is it different from when you actually, because it's still working. I have seen from my own experience that even when you do it in a general way, it is still working. and it is still working quite effectively because whether it is breath or whether it is the asanas.
Actually, you have answered your own question. It is difficult. It is different teaching individual and teaching a group. I think for convenience sake, and groups are there. But a teacher knows the individuality of a group if it's a small group, and we alter it. Individual teaching is completely a different experience altogether. I'm not talking about online, just you're with a group and you're with a teacher, it's a different thing. The traditional way of teaching. Yogis learned that way. In a group, it is very difficult. I agree. If you want to attend to individualism, because you have to help, but you say it is very effective and things like that. But you might miss certain aspect. There is something when you're doing by yourself, you look into some reality, some clarity. I do not know how it works in a group, you know. Group is more acceptance. Individual is more inquiry.
May I add that in my personal experience, but of course, it's my personal experience with Desikachar, there was he was listening to what I was saying. Also, he was inquiring, yes, about my state of mind, of thought, and so on, and then he could draw a practice. And I think it's very different. Not only that he can be more precise, you can be more precise, but also that you have listened to the person, which is the person feels that she has been listened to. And I think it's very different in individual classes. Mm.
Can I just add something here? Yeah, couple of things. Now, one is, one of the things that Krishnamacharya has said is when you're teaching somebody, there is also what he called transfer of power. So when you're teaching one-to-one, this is possible, that there's some direct pranic relationship that can develop. When you're teaching one-to-many, in my experience, what happens is you're teaching the technique and person just learns the technique, and depending on their ability, they absorb something. This relationship with the teacher is non-existent. There is only a relationship with the asana or whatever is being taught. And there's a big difference between the two. Right? The other thing is that, there's an old story, where Parvati asks Shiva how many asanas are there. And he said there are as many asanas as there are human beings. So I think the answer is very clear,
Thank you, sir. Thank you, everyone.
Before we move to the next question, with regard to the earlier question, there was one comment on our Facebook. We are also live streaming this on Facebook from Rahi Santanam, who has also been a student of Sir. She mentioned that Sir said to observe the lines of the body in the posture and learn to draw, and that truly helped in many ways. So there is a comment which was added. Next question is from Maya Tan, and the question is to Laurence. This was mainly, what is the chant that you chanted at the beginning? So,
it is a Gregorian chant. It is Horate Cheli. The meaning is about let the heavens resonate and let, I would say, dharma, dharma megha, let dharma come down on the earth through the rain, so that the Savior Salvatore can grow. And so it is a Gregorian chant, which takes place a little before Christmas.
Thank you. One correction, it was asked by May Tan, not Maya. My computer auto-corrected when I typed in. So, the next question is from Deepa. She's asking, from the time Desikachar taught to the way life is today, especially with how fast-paced and confusing the times are today, do you feel a need to reevaluate how we teach, learn, and practice yoga?
I have the feeling that we have to stick to something anyway, because otherwise it's just going to move in other directions. And maybe our main responsibility is to stick to the spirit and the precise ways of doing which we got from our teachers.
Yoga tradition hasn't changed. We change. Okay. When we change, we also try to change what we receive. I think it is possible to teach the tradition as maybe because our body has changed, our outlook has changed, our requirement has changed maybe, but yoga has not changed. It is the same principle or same thing. Even then, we do change our way of teaching to different people, whether it's therapy or Yoga Sutra or anything, so that their one's level of accepting it and absorbing, we keep changing. So perhaps we use that idea. But otherwise, I think the tradition is the same. You make the modification, even postures we make modification, but we cannot dilute it. The spirit cannot be diluted. Because, sir, one of the things sir said when you were teaching, that is earliest, he says, you teach what you feel is true and is a reality, or you feel what is true and what they require. You do not teach what they want you to teach, you see. This I always think I think that will answer this question.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Next question is from Catherine, and it's addressed to... Yeah. So the question is, can any of the teachers give some advice on how to overcome lack of confidence at the beginning of teaching? When you begin.
I gave you one. How my teacher helped me to overcome this thing. I think teachers can always do this work. Because interaction is not just, as you say, technical. Interaction is also connecting. Like Raghu said something about, TV said something about transmission of power. Power means here are my students, they want to teach, so I'm transmitting. Like if you go deeper into it, like Dakshinamurti with his 4 disciples there. So, but I take it that the teacher who is, you can develop confidence, it's all right. It is practice, everything is an abhyasam. Tirgakala, Nairantarya, I think with practice. And be also honest about your knowledge. You don't know, you learn. That's all.
Lakshmi, don't you think lack of confidence should never be fully overcome?
Actually, see, that is why we go to learn, isn't it, from a good teacher. We all have that. To start with, we were lost and lack of confidence. I think this is the thing which the teacher transmits. And you have to, I don't know, and maybe you can understand the mind a little more and talk about it, you know. In my case, I didn't know anything about yoga tradition.
Sure.
I just learned from my teacher, both the teachers.
Yeah, but I'm saying,
yeah,
it's good not to be very confident, no?
Yeah, yeah.
Yes, clearly.
I think that is a very important aspect, TV, also, because what I remember Desikachar sir always saying is, you know, when you go into a class, always remember you have 2 teachers, one behind you and one in front of you. And then you are actually trying to bridge this, what you have learned, and making it relevant to the person in front of you. So it's best to remain a little insignificant yourself, and to know that, you know, there is, you to hold it very carefully, this whole transmission process. I think I agree that a little bit of nervousness is good for health in a teacher, to constantly want to know what you know, refresh your memory, and to listen, like Laurence was saying, to listen to the person in front of you carefully and be aware of yourself. I think it's a very beautiful process, and I also feel there's no harm in a bit of nervousness. Healthy nervousness.
But lack of knowledge keeps going all your life. So there is also a learning all your life, you see. And somebody has to encourage. Some teacher, some form, be it nature, be it a person, or be it in some encouragement you have to get from the outside to go inside, I feel.
For me, the situation when the people are still in the teacher's training process, and I can at the same time encourage them to begin to teach, for instance, but I can be there to help them with the questions they may have, and so on. This situation is a very good one. I try to encourage people to start teaching a little bit before the end of their training, actually.
I think there are
I feel because I do have sometimes, I do have lack of confidence. The best way I do it is only say what I know, you see.
Yes.
That is how I then learn what I don't know, kind of thing. You see, this is how I started progress learning, you see. Sriram?
I just wanted to say there are 3 aspects actually. One is the teacher, the third is the second is the student, and then the knowledge or whatever, you know. And if you go into a class as a teacher, you're not the main person. There are 3 parts. You're 1/3 only. The student is the 2/3, and the knowledge which needs to get passed from one direction, one to the other, is the 3rd aspect of what is going to happen in that room, in that space. So if you take your role a little bit behind and keep the person in front of you very much in mind, and of course the knowledge which is going to link you, then you gain confidence, I feel.
Very nicely put, because I think it also goes back, links to what Lakshmi says, and which has been something of a learning for me all my life, is that you teach only what you know, and what you have understood and what you have made your own. Of course, you continue to learn, continue to understand, hopefully a little more. But when you're ready to share, you're coming from a space of what you know, and the one in front is as important. So
yeah,
very nicely.
Thank you. We are close to the end of the time. We just have one more question from Radhika. Radhika, if you'd like to unmute.
Yeah, my question is as follows. Listening to all of you, one sees that the way of learning most disciplines traditionally was to have a sort of long-term apprenticeship with the teacher, no? And stay for many years, going back, and even after one has started teaching, to go back and learn as well as teach. And in addition to that apprenticeship, I'm also seeing the fellowship between all of you as colleagues, learning from one another. And traditionally, as far as I know, one didn't have too many other influences. And even if it was there, you had to physically go there and seek knowledge from, say, another guru or another lineage or whatever. But now, all of us have done structured 2-year programs or 3-year programs, and graduated, and not necessarily staying back with this kind of a long-term apprenticeship. So I'm wondering, what, and with all the flood of information everywhere, what will remain as, what can we call authentic versus, what is everything very mixed up into an avial? How do we adapt to this?
I don't know. I had one teacher. So, I think I have to think about this. We were very blessed to have one teacher. These, you see.
13 hours.
So this avial, I don't know. I think I can leave it to somebody else to answer this. It's difficult, I know that, because we get people from the other system and it's very difficult for them as well as for us. But I think, yes, Laurence, you like to answer this?
Yeah, no, I also have a concern about the long-term kind of, continuing, apprenticeship. And
no, I have a speculation here. Yeah. I think we have to look at why the person is learning. Yeah, today most learning is for monetizing the learning. I'm not talking only about yoga, everything. The second is the factory type of understanding of learning, right? And the third issue is no ethics, no human contact, just create instruments of consumption or instruments of a purpose. I think yoga has a very, very different basis, really. If you take it seriously, it's for discovery of the self, transcending the self, and so on. And I don't think transcending the self or learning about the self can happen in a factory model. It cannot happen from a utilitarian mindset. So you're comparing two completely different things. So if somebody comes into yoga with a utilitarian mindset, which is happening today, they will learn from whomever they want some 2.5 techniques and go and teach somebody who also wishes to be in a consuming utilitarian kind of frame. But if you're serious, and this is true of everything, I think philosophy, even Western philosophy, when it is taught, teachers stay with a particular stream of philosophy for many years. Because the issue is not utilitarian, the issue is real deep inquiry. So they're two completely different things.
Thank you, Raghu. I really agree.
I'm not sure why we have come to separate the process of teaching from the process of personal growth. I think teaching is a part of part of personal growth. But today, when teaching has become separate, that I studied to become a teacher, I don't know if that was the case really. We studied and then we shared from where we were at each point. But we continued to study for personal growth. So that's, I think, also what I understand from what TV is saying. To me, that is a very significant part of this process that I think most of us have shared. We didn't study to teach, or we didn't study to become teachers, which is a very new concept as I see it. So
A difficult situation, because I do feel sorry for those who think about learning from different teachers, because they are offered these certificates all the time, you see. So they become collectors of these things, you see. It's a very sad situation.
Yeah, because I also really love how with almost all of you, even starting with Ramaswamy sir, that one went to learn, and then at one point the teacher said, now you can teach, or why don't you teach? So, and you waited until they said that to.
No, we didn't wait. We never asked.
we didn't wait.
I never waited to be asked to go and teach. Desikachar simply said,
Go and teach.
time you
Go
teach.
and
So there, go and teach.
go.
Yes, sir, she'll go and teach. But I don't know what to teach, sir. Doesn't matter, you go and teach. And you
I
learn.
agree.
So you go there, you get scared, you teach, you come back, you show what you've taught. He says, okay, not okay, where were you? Whatever. There's a dialogue around it. And you carry on, yeah.
So teaching became a calling. You were called.
Nice. That's right.
I remember I got my first student after like attending one weekend of a teacher training program. But I was already practicing for 2 years before that. And I did not know how to draw stick figures. I was so scared. He just said, go teach. This is a practice, go teach that student. So yeah, he just tells you and you have to do that.
I don't know whether you all remember, probably TV and Sriram remember, there was one student who had classes with one of the senior teachers. Every day he would learn something and then go and teach it to somebody. So we used to make fun, and he said, why don't you teach pregnancy today? And let's see classes, let's see what he does tomorrow, kind of thing, you see. I'm sure both TV and Sriram remember. It was a very funny thing. So
Thank you, everyone. This entire last part of this conversation also reminded of the first time I asked Saras, what's the best way to learn? So Saras said, go teach. So that you start learning and deepen your learning.
I wonder whether we answered the question we were asked.
I'm also wondering whether.
Thank you all so much.
Some questions are best left unanswered, Lakshmi.
Yes. I think that is the best answer.
But before we end, may I please request Lakshmi to do a little bit of chanting from something that she has been working with and studying from. So please, Lakshmi. And with that, we will end this very wonderful session today.
This is from Tirumandiram, Tirumandiram. There are about 104 verses regarding prana and the breath. So I'll be chanting few of them. Okay. Tiruchitrambalam. ஆரியன் நல்லன் குதிரை இரண்டுள வீசி பிடிக்கும் விரகறிவாரில்லை கூரியநாதன் குருவின் அருள் பெற்றால் வாரி பிடிக்க வசப்படுந்தானே புள்ளிலும் மிக்க புரவியை மேற்கொண்டால் கள்ளுண்ண வேண்டாம் தானே களிதரும் துள்ளி நடப்பிக்கும் சோம்பு தவிர்ப்பிக்கும் உள்ளது சொன்னோம் உணர்வுடையோருக்கே பிராணன் மனத்தொடும் பேராது அடங்கி பிராணன் இருக்கிற் பிறப்பிறப்பில்லை பிராணன் மடைமாறி பேச்சறிவித்து பிராணன் நடைபேறு பெற்றுண்டீர் நீரே. ஏறுதல் பூரகம் ஈரட்டு வாமத்தால் ஆறுதல் கும்பகம் 64 ஊறுதல் 32 மாறுதல் ஒன்றின் கண் வஞ்சகமாமே. வழியினை வாங்கி பயத்தில் அடக்கில் பழிங்கொத்து காயம் பழுக்கினும் பிஞ்சாம். தெளிய குருவின் திருவருள் பெற்றால் வழியினும் பேட்டு வழியனுமாமே. எங்கே இருக்கினும் பூரியிடத்திலே அங்கே அது செய்ய ஆக்கை கழிவில்லை. அங்கே பிடித்தது விட்டளவும் செல்ல சங்கே குறிக்க தலைவனுமாமே. ஏற்றி இறக்கி இரு காலும் பூரிக்கும் காற்றை பிடிக்கும் கணக்கறிவாரில்லை. காற்றை பிடிக்கும் கணக்கறிவாளர்க்கு கூற்றை உதைக்கும் எதுவாமே. இட்டதவ் வீடு இளகாயிரேசித்து புட்டிப்பட தசநாடியும் பூரித்து கொட்டி பிராணன் அபானனும் கும்பித்து நட்டம் இருக்க நமனில்லைதானே. திருச்சிற்றம்பலம்.
Thank you, Lakshmi.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Lakshmi, thank you. Very lovely.
So thank you all for joining for this dialogue session today. If you would like to watch it again, it's available on our social media channels, and we'll be back next month for another dialogue session, and hope to see you all next time. Thank you, Lakshmi. Thanks, Jyotsna, Sarat, Ram, and Rakhu for joining today's session.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Laurence, thank you, Lakshmi. Thank you, Hari.
Thank you all very
Jyotsna.
much.
Thank you, all of you.
Ram TV, thank you.